about my love? Wasn't it enough? Just let me know so I can...
Hey man, Sunbelt predictions, man. If you guys don't know about the Sunbelt, they've been playing some really good football over the years. To me, it's between them and the AAC of who's the best conference in the group of five. Mountain West has been like this, you know. You got the Boise States that come out of there, San Diego State every once in a while. Air Force, yeah, you know what I'm saying. Shout out that 𝙎𝙤𝙘𝙀𝙀𝙀 man. That dude was awesome to watch. But let's go ahead and get into our predictions. We're gonna get into our runners up first, and then we'll get into our winners. So they do have divisions. They're the last conference with 2 divisions, by the way, just to call that out. And I believe that's going away next year, so I think they're gonna be part of the regular rotation. Somebody in the comments correct me if I'm wrong or not. I think I read that somewhere. But anyways, let's get right over to it. So our runners up across the board are these fine teams. We're all different. We'll get into Don's and all of theirs too on the next slide. But as far as the 3 on the panel today, Khalid's got Appalachian State as a runner-up. I have Arkansas State as a runner-up, and Sora has Texas State. So 2 of these teams are actually really popular to win, and you guys both have them as runner-ups. Explain yourselves.
Sora, you want this first? You want me?
Nah, go ahead, man.
All right. So Appalachian State, I mean, Dante, you kind of just mentioned this. Appalachian State and Texas State are generally viewed as the best 2 teams in the Sun Belt, just kind of like in general by most people, right? Mm-hmm. App State, you even chose them to beat Clemson. They are a really solid team, and they return, really like some key players, including quarterback Joey Aguiar, who you mentioned earlier. Yep. Mm-hmm. And they returned their top 4 receivers, which, I mean, that's always a good sign. When you return your entire passing game, really. Just looking at their offense, though, that's all. They lose a lot on their offensive line, and starting running back Nate Noel, who transferred to Missouri. Yeah, he's a dog.
I remember we was watching him. I forgot what Appalachian State game that was last year. I was like, that Nate Noel dude is a beast. Hold up, brother. But go ahead. Sorry.
So they added a lot on the offensive line through the portal. And Kanye Roberts, their presumably new starting running back, also rushed for over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns, which was 2 more touchdowns than Noel had rushed for. So, you could look at it and say like, well, they lose their starting running back though. Like Kanye Roberts should be able to adequately fill in, at least based off of last year's production. Noel had a little bit of a down year. For me, it's more of the offensive line, right? You lose talent up there. That's really important because that is the one position group that directly affects every single play, that both the passing and the running game. So that isn't exactly good for them. But, looking at their schedule here, right? You mentioned they start with East Tennessee State. Then after they play at Clemson, they play East Carolina. South Alabama next. Liberty will be a good game. I have them beating Liberty. I think that was Liberty's only loss that I gave them. And then the rest of the way, they play Georgia Southern. That could be tough. James Madison, who's looking down. They play at Coastal. They play at Louisiana, which that could also be like a trap game. I only had them losing 2 games in their conference slate, but App State, I mean, to me, they lack experience in the trenches, offensively and defensively, which for me is like, that's where I like to build teams. And if your team has a good offensive line and a good defensive line, you can generally bet on them being a solid team holistically. They lack experience in those position groups. And so I think they'll be a good team, but whenever I talk about my winner, I don't think they'll have enough to beat who I view as having an even better roster.
Yeah, man. I just, Appalachian State's team is just, I think they're going to be all around good, but that schedule, even with Clemson on their schedule, which has nothing to do with them in the Sun Belt, but it could either make or break their season. I think those are confident building games, especially if they're winning 3 quarters of that game. Then in the fourth quarter, they just let up. It'd be nasty work. But you guys are probably surprised about Arkansas State, and no, it's not because I played with them in our connected dynasty. But
Liar.
As I mentioned before, Jalen Rayner went to a school that I'm very familiar with in East Forsyth. My dad went there, and he was pretty much the whole Arkansas State offense last year. I think they're returning about 5 starters, and I think one of the things last year is they played 2 really tough games to begin their season. It was against Oklahoma and Memphis, and I believe they lost by like 100+ points to them and only scored 3 points. But 6 games after that, they rebounded and they won about 6 games for the rest of that season. The one thing that I did want to call out though is about Rob Harley. So I know that their defense was like the weakest point. They gave up a lot of points last year, and that was, one thing that was harped on a lot is can their defense respond? But I remember Rob Harley back in like 2014 when FIU's defense was one of the most disruptive in the group of 5 stages, right? And I think they returned about 6 starters. It was like 4, 5, 6 starters on that defense. So I don't see that defense is going to mesh as greatly to get them a championship in the Sun Belt. But I believe with his coaching prowess, him being an Ohio State graduate, he knows what good defense is supposed to look like, and just how young and hungry that team is going to be. I think, with him at the helm of that, being a defensive coordinator, that they could possibly put the pieces together next year to have a championship contending team in the Sun Belt. But that's kind of like why they were my runner-up. Like, I mean, I do like them a little bit more than Texas State, and I realize that they get a lot of the hype, because of how they are. But, they've had a couple changes at quarterbacks and, things like that too. They had TJ Finley last year, and, I'm not the biggest fan of guys that just, if they're not in the FBS and they're transferred from an FBS school to another FBS school that meshes well with them in the system. Like, why I think Will Howard is going to thrive and Ryan Day's, and Chip Kelly's offense is because he's got 2 really good running backs that are going to be able to carry them as well. And Will Howard's just going to be able to, punch it in whenever he needs to. But that's neither here nor there. Talking about Arkansas State, I think they definitely can finish, first in the West, but just coming up short to another team that I'll mention here later. So I think they have a really good team, though. I think they have a really good team.
He returned 10 offensive starters.
Oh, it's 10 total? I thought it was only 6.
I'm seeing 6 on defense and 10 on offense.
Okay. I probably had my numbers switched there, but it's all good. They returned a lot. I know I thought it was like 6 apiece on both sides, but yeah, I know Rob Harley. I just remember him at FIU having like a really good defense. I remember it being talked about. I had to look up the year. I'm like, which was the year that FIU's defense was really, really good? Because they were thinking about dropping them the group of 5 for the longest time until they were fairly decent. But
Butch Jones, their head coach.
Butch Jones is their head coach. Yep. You are correct.
Power 5 experience. Sorry.
Runner up for you, Sor, is Texas State.
Yeah.
Sir?
So I know I was kind of surprised as well, especially because I remember a couple of years ago, I think I had said this was one of the worst teams, which they were. Yeah. And then first year under G.J. Kine took them to 8-5 and brought Texas State to their first ever bowl game and blew out Rice out the water. So he now has the full season, the full, reigns over the over the recruits, transfer portal. Got 25 transfers, one of them being Jordan McLeod, which was the ex-quarterback for JMU, who was also the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year.
Which is crazy that he didn't go to an FBS squad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like DeQuan Finn went, but not Jordan McLeod. That was weird. But
if Coach Khan was able to do all this with TJ Finley as his quarterback last year and have it as 8-5 and blow out Rice like 42-21 in their first ever bowl game. I mean, he just completely turned that program around. And now that he's had he's gotten his first year out under the belt, he's more experienced now. He has, more of an understanding with recruiting and transfer portals and all that stuff. You know, again, much like with what Mike Elko did at Duke. I'm not comparing the two programs saying that they're going to be the next Duke, but in his first year, he was able to turn around a poverty franchise. Now imagine what he can do now that he's more comfortable, you know, understands the head coaching job a bit better, you know, understands the culture better, all that stuff. I mean, yeah, I think the school that I have as my winner is a bit better. But yeah, doing research, just looking at Texas State, especially after seeing that they got Jordan McLeod and what all they had last year and how much success they were able to do, I think Texas State can be a runner-up.
Because
they also went 6-2 in the conference.
Let me just put it like this: this division itself, or this conference itself, was super hard when you look up and down at these teams. Like, I know James Madison got mentioned, but can Louisiana make a thread back? South Alabama, what can they do? Even Troy, it's they've had little successes here and there over the years. I'm surprised that on a lot of people's lists, like not ours, but a lot of people's lists, like Georgia Southern took a big hit. I know with Marcus Curl leaving, but like, geez, are they going to fall off that much where they're not going to be able to be mentioned? I think it's going to be really competitive. I mean, I could see a lot of these teams losing 3 to 4 games against conference rivals here, this year. But that's my hot take. So Don and Hayden and Tony. Don has Texas State as a runner-up. Hayden has James Madison as a runner-up. Tony has Appalachian State, but the ECG runners-up is going to be Texas State.
Appalachian State and Texas State, I can understand. I need to know why JMU.
James Madison, I agree.
They've lost so much.
This is not the first time you're going to see JMU.
Oh, boy.
By the way.